The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily represent those of this station or its management.
It's time now for Where You Live with Gene Sullivan, the show that deals with the news and events that affect you the most. Whether you rent or own, live in an HOA, single-family home, or an apartment building, Gene will tackle the issues right where you live. So, from the True North Painting Studios, here is the original man of steel, Resolve himself, who stands for truth, justice, and the association way. Here's Gene Sullivan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Where You Live. I'm Gene Sullivan. I'm broadcasting from the True North Painting Studios. When you're looking for the right painting contractor, what do you look for? Isn't it someone who will respect you, your time, your property, and your budget? That's what you can expect from True North Painting. Find out more about this exceptional company by going online at truenorthpainting.com. That's trunorthpainting.com, or give them a call at 952-831-1433. I'm also brought to you by the great folks at Extreme Exteriors and American Family Insurance, the Kim Bennett Agency. Wish to give also a welcome and shout out to Christopher Wyatt Earp Huberty at the board. How are you, Chris?
I'm good, Gene. How about yourself?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Hey, have you ever heard of the saying that I goes something like this? I think that making sausage and passing a bill at the legislature is kind of the same process. It's something you just don't want to see.
Yeah, I've heard. I don't want to see how the sausage is made. I just want to eat it.
Yes,
that's basically the same thing.
Yes. If you can find out who said that quote and what that exact one is, that would be great.
You got it.
Okay. And we're going to be talking about some sausage that's being made at the state legislature. We're going to be dealing with a couple issues. Today we'll be dealing with an issue that deals with landlord-renter relations, and then also one that is dealing with homeowner associations as well. So because we've got a full plate here on the show today, let's get started with property management in the news. Property management in the news is brought to you by Home Furniture and Abbey Floor Coverings. Their showrooms are staffed with professionals who will help you choose what you need to fit both your lifestyle and budget. Whatever you need, chances are they'll have what you're looking for. Now, if you wish to avail yourself of special pricing you won't find anywhere else, all Where You Live listeners can call Customer Service Coordinator Lori Matson at 952-224-2663. Well, let's begin with our first issue here that we're going to talk about on the show today, and that is a renter notification bill. And I'm happy to say we have a guest on the show to weigh in on this matter with us. We have, as a guest today, senior housing attorney Paul Bernberg, who is with Homeline. And that, of course, is a nonprofit Minnesota tenant advocacy organization. Hello, Paul. Thanks for being on the show today.
Good afternoon. Yes, thank you.
I appreciate you taking some time. Could you tell us in a nutshell for our listeners a little bit more about this notification bill? It's labeled House File 300. What is it and what is it supposed to do?
The bill, which also has a Senate companion, which I believe is Senate File 591, would require that before a landlord of residential property files an eviction action for non-payment, he first, or it first, or she first, must give a 7-day warning notice to the tenant stating that the tenant's in arrears on the rent, how much is owed, and stating that if the tenant doesn't pay in the next 7 days, the landlord reserves the right to file an eviction action for non-payment. there's some other details in the bill, but that's the core of the bill.
Okay. And so that's something that the landlord will be required to do, to give a 7-day notice or warning, and then that has to be shown after that when the landlord goes to file for the eviction. Is that correct?
That's right. The landlord would staple a photocopy of or printout of that
Okay.
to the complaint. This is something that over 40 of the other states already require, so it's hard to put kind of the opposite of a radical proposal. It's something that, in one form or another, our guess is somewhere around 80 or 90% of the landlords do already.
Well, yeah, let's get into that in just a little bit. So we're talking about something that is not a law. This is just a bill that's introduced, and you mentioned that you believe the companion bill is Senate File 591. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this idea for this bill, is this something that was initiated by Homeline?
We were involved in it. I mean, it's been suggested by various tenant groups and groups like the Interfaith Outreach and whatnot that help tenants with paying rent in a variety of groups. I think originally, actually, the bill that got introduced this session got introduced in 2010 in a slightly different form. So I can't tell you the exact genesis of it. Certainly, we're active in trying to promote it.
Okay. So, do you expect that there's going to be much pushback on this bill as it continues on going through committee?
I mean, the landlords trade group has opposed it, and I think they'll continue to oppose it. I mean, I'm always hopeful that reasonable minds can get together on this, but it's hard to. I mean, so far there's been pushback. Yes.
Okay. All right. And so we've got it. It went into was introduced probably in the Housing Committee first. Is that correct? And then this last week it went through the Civil Law Committee. They're going to take a look at.
Correct. I mean, it was introduced in the first half of this biennium, last calendar year. It actually passed the two committees that needed to in the House, but it was real near the end of the session. So that sort of ended it for last calendar year. Under the rules, it had to come back to the House Committee again, and it got repassed. I think it was Monday.
Okay.
It's on the House floor. So
Okay.
its next process will be heard by the Senate Committee, and
Okay.
hopefully it will get passed this year.
So
That's a good idea.
tell me, Paul, why do you think that this bill is needed?
It's needed. Well, let me tell you the advantages, which kind of implies the need. One is that groups like emergency assistance, which is a federally funded program to help tenants with rent payments and some energy payments, and some private groups that do the same sort of thing, like Interfaith Outreach and Salvation Army, generally will not contribute toward a tenant's rent, help them catch up, that is, to send a check to the landlord without some sort of written demand for the rent. It can be an eviction case, but by that time, things get more expensive, and so this is going to promote landlords, some landlords who aren't doing it now, to send such a letter and save. What saves the tenant, they don't get an eviction on their record, which really screws up the tenant record. If the case ends up in court, the landlord's down about $400 to get going, unless the tenant can come up with that money already. What the landlord's going to get is an empty unit. And so what this will do is promote essentially getting some money from third parties, charities, et cetera, to pay tenants rent and put money in the landlord's pocket.
Well,
Secondly,
don't you think that that's happening now? I would imagine that in most cases now that with a landlord, rent will be due on the 1st, and they will send out a notice saying, hey, the rent is due, and they give a notice now that says, hey, you need to make this payment or an eviction is imminent. And so this is something that is already being done.
You're right and you're wrong. I mean, you're right in that our estimate, and estimates can vary, but we've done some studies looking at court cases, is somewhere around 80 to 90% of the landlords are already doing either exactly what the bill requires or something darn close to it. But that leaves the other 10 or 20% of the landlords who aren't. And a lot of the laws essentially are trying to drag the bad landlords into the modern age and make them into good landlords. And by good landlord, I mean not only a landlord that's respectful to the tenants, but also that is good at collecting money. I'll just give you a couple examples. There's a statute on the books that requires the landlord who has a written lease to give a copy to the tenant. I mean, it's good business sense to do it, because otherwise how is the tenant going to follow the rules? But some landlords weren't doing it, so there was a statute passed that says you got to do it or there's some bad things that are going to happen to you. There's another statute that says if you take cash money for rent, some landlords won't do it because of robbery situations, but if you take cash money, you got to give a receipt. I mean, hardly a radical idea, but some landlords weren't doing it. So in a sense, well, not in a real sense, this is designed to get at, like a lot of these statutes, the bad landlords, incompetent and bad landlords. And there's some that think they're in the eviction business. Again, it's a small fraction, 10, 20%, and just file without warning, or they wait 2 months and then all of a sudden they yell at the tenant, "You pay tomorrow or else," and then they go sometimes file an eviction action.
I have a hard time categorizing that there would be a landlord that, instead of being in the business of renting out their property and having an income property, they're in the business of evictions, because it is my experience, you don't make money in evictions. You're losing each and every time.
Oh, no. You're exactly correct. The good quality landlords, and again, I think those are in the 80, 90% range. You and I exactly agree. I mean, that's true. It's just there's some landlords who, I mean, they literally they take it personally and they do nutty things and they somehow think that they should evict. And so this statute would kind of force them to be better landlords.
Okay.
And those who aren't giving exactly the right kind of notice that would help get money out of places like the Salvation Army and emergency assistance would be sort of guided that way. Again, it's strange enough, some of the complaints I've heard from landlords are like, I mean, they're...
Well, let's hang on on some of those complaints. I've got to take a break right now, but Paul, you can stay with me for one more segment, can't you?
No problem.
Great. We're talking to senior housing attorney Paul Bernberg with Homeline about House File 300, a renter notification bill. We're asking the question, is it necessary? Well, we'll find out more after these messages.